Okay, here we go. But okay, so hi everybody. Welcome to this OLA. I am Leah. I'm one of the CHS on the national team and originally from Chi chapter. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I'm from. Um, and I think that is enough about me. But let's get started here. Here we go. So just some general reminders. If you can't, don't worry about it. But if you can, turn your camera on. I would love to see your faces. And if you haven't already, change your name on here to like your first and last name, your chapter and position, or just throw it in the chat for me, just so I can make sure I get you for your attendance. I really appreciate your time and appreciate you being here, but I want to make sure it counts. Um, well, yeah, so just do that for me if you haven't, so I can make sure I mark your attendance so you can get credit for being here. Okay. So just as an overview, a quick overview of what we're going to be going over today, essentially, cultural competence and bias, what that is, what that means, how that affects us, developing awareness and skills for inclusivity, and sort of how that works in a leadership role, and how to just foster a sense of belonging within your chapter, and in life in general, to be honest. So just as just a quick like question for everyone, you can come off of mute, it's fine, throw it in the chat. But what does inclusivity mean to you guys in like one or two, maybe three words? Any takers? Yeah, that's good, Laura. So yeah, so making sure everyone feels like they belong, that's essentially wrapping it up. But yeah, we want to make sure that everyone feels like they have a safe place within our organization, that we are, being helpful in that way. And just giving that sense of belonging, totally. So cultural competence, what is it? But essentially just a general definition of it. It can be defined as just the ability to understand or interact and communicate, appreciate people with diverse backgrounds. And just a couple key components of that would be like self-awareness or cultural knowledge, adaptability, being an advocate, being action oriented. But essentially, like with self-awareness, we want to first recognize our own identities, what our beliefs are, what our biases are, so that we can better help ourselves and others. And with cultural knowledge, we want to make sure we learn about the perspectives of others so we can get a better understanding of who they are, um, and being adaptable to different situations, and with communication and interactions so that we can be respectful to other people's experiences, their mindsets, their goals. And then with being an advocate and being action oriented about it, just fostering that sense of belonging, challenging discrimination whenever we can, and promoting inclusivity so that people feel welcome. So why do we think this matters? I guess in the context of OFIA, but like just in a general sense as well. And you can throw it in the chat or come off me, that's fine. Let's see, we got an answer. Everyone has a unique perspective and experience to offer that can enrich the organization and also make us closer. It's beautifully worded, exactly. So I kind of broke this up into just two general um categories here, but from a leadership standpoint, just by being culturally competent, you can shape and develop your own skills within OFIA. It can help you with being a better networker in your professional life or in your academic life. And it also shows up in your professional development in general once college is done and you're in like the working field that you want to be in. And that can help you be a more effective leader now and in the future. And then also just from a relationship standpoint, from um, how Abigail touched on, but that's really crucial to build relationships with each other within the organization, as an organization with outside organizations, but just kind of understanding people better so that we can help them better, we can serve them better, and help each other as well. And just really fostering that community and that friendship. And it also allows us to just gain a general understanding of one another and being respectful about it as well, um, while we celebrate our differences. So I guess just to start, like with understanding cultural competence, we have to understand implicit biases and how that would influence the culture of our individual chapters. So just to start, so a general like definition of implicit bias would be just any like subconscious feeling or prejudice, like an attitude or a belief that a person might have or that they develop throughout their own life experiences, and that can affect their behavior, their attitudes, and their decision making. And I want to point out like it's really important to note that subconscious biases are super common, and sometimes we're unaware that we even have them. And it's like, it's okay, like as long as we're taking the actions to learn how to like grow out of it or make it better, and just kind of understanding how to work through those. And this could show up in lots of ways, but it could be like ageism. Like, for example, just as a personal experience. So, my little, when I was in college, she is actually, I think, 15 years older than me. But I remember like when she was in her new member process, I was like, oh, like that's so interesting that she's like older than us. Like I thought it was a little weird. Because I had never seen a college student like of her age before. Like she's a mom and everything. I adore her. But it was just like that was my own kind of example of how I had this subconscious bias that I didn't realize that I had because I made an assumption of what I thought like a college student like was or should be. That could also show up as like gender bias, for example, like we're an inclusive organization. We have guys, we have gals, and I feel like there's sometimes been like a shift in how some of us have thought like, okay, like this is a female organization when that's just not true. It could look like racial or cultural bias, religious bias, anything, honestly. But I think it's important to note that they're not always like on the nose kind of things. Like, just for example, like what I have written here. So, a lot of people, when they hear kindergarten teacher, they automatically assume female. And maybe that's just because we've had like female kindergarten teachers. So that's what most of us picture. But there's kind of like we have to acknowledge the erasure of like male teachers that are out there, male kindergarten teachers that are out there, because they do exist. So, what can implicit bias look like, sort of within the context of OFIA? So, with leadership, this could show up as like unequal leadership representation in a chapter. And I will say, like, the good thing, we have kind of like a built-in component to combat this with voting and elections. So, in theory, our chapters should essentially look like a reflection of our chapter as a whole. But still, that could be a problem that comes up that we're not really reflective of the people we're representing. There's can sometimes be an unintentional overlooking of diverse voices, and that can show up in many ways too. But I guess just kind of like think about it in the context of it's always easier for us to, I guess, pay more attention to like things that we understand or we've had experience with, or people that look like us, or people that talk like us or act like us. Because we have a deeper understanding of that, it's kind of harder for us to pay more attention to things that are kind of outside of our own box, I guess. Um, and another thing is performative inclusivity. That's something we want to look out for. And what I mean by that is just having like the advocacy, but not having the action component. So that could be like, just as an example, um, say it's like Black History Month or like Pride Month or something like that. It's very easy for us to put out an Instagram post to acknowledge, but what are we doing to serve those communities? What are we doing to serve our members that are in those communities? Like, how are we helping them? Like, what are we doing? Um, outside of just showing people like, hey, we acknowledge this. Um, and as a chapter, there could be things that pop up like just kind of uneducated or insensitive traditions or actions, or it could come up as like in recruitment, like exclusionary recruitment choices. Again, like we are more prone to be drawn to people that look like us or people that sound like us, people we have shared experiences with, things like that. So we have to like kind of keep that at of our mind at all times, just so we can make sure that we're combating that. Um, and then microaggressions that can show up a lot of times. And just a couple examples I listed here. But like if someone's first language is not English and you comment on that, and it doesn't even have to be rude necessarily, like you could compliment them on their English, but in a way you're kind of diminishing and downplaying their intelligence. Like they could take it that way. Or like nicknaming someone because their name's too hard for you to say. Um, but just making sure we show up for different people, like learning how to say someone's name would mean a lot to them, instead of trying to change it when it's not who they are. So just really like kind of understanding like those little things might be little to us, but big to someone else. And we want to make sure that we're being really cognizant of people's emotions and their feelings, how they react to things, and we don't want to be dismissive. So how can we fix this? How can we prevent this? And I mean, I pointed this out again because I think it's really important, but just it's always easier for us to pay more attention to things that we understand, people that look like us, people that act like us. And that's okay as long as we make sure that we're paying attention to others as well, and that we're developing our own knowledge so we can um, expand essentially as an organization and as an individual. So some ways that we can do that, first and foremost, self-reflection. I think it's really important that we just acknowledge our own biases when we become aware of them and understand how that can affect us as leaders and human beings, and how that affects our decision making, affects our actions, how we speak to people, how we communicate and interact with others. And one good way to do this, you could take a bias assessment. But I have one linked here. I can drop it in the chat if anyone wants to take it, but it's a study that was conducted by Harvard, and they have like a big old list of a bunch of bias assessments that they compiled. Like I know one's like on like religion, there's a few on like race, there's one on like wealth, there's an ageism one. But they're really cool assessments. So you can just kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's I don't want to say get a shock factor, but just so you can get a baseline of like how you think, whether that's conscious or subconscious. So happy to send that out to you guys. I'll just link it in the chat too when I pull it back up. But but yeah, that's one cool way that you can do that. And then also just general training and ongoing education. We can do DEI workshops for our chapter members, and just looking at what your university has to offer. Because I mean, most schools have resources to help with this and help you guys as a whole, with any like issues that arise, or just like with general like knowledge and training. Um, to help your chapter as a whole. And these are things that like should be like ongoing education. Like we don't want to, do it one time or do one thing and then think we're experts all of a sudden. Like this is ongoing all the time. There's always issues that arise, just not even necessarily within a chapter, but like within the world. And just making sure that we're always gaining better understanding of just people as a whole. And then listening and being more accountable. So we want to make sure that there's always a safe space for our members to share concerns, to provide feedback. We don't want to be dismissive of anything, and we want to make sure that we take appropriate actions and respectful actions for anything that comes up. And then, of course, being a service organization, this can reflect in our events and our projects. So the projects that we do and how we spend our time with other members and like with each other, with other organizations, it's always a great way to learn something new. Oh, why is this not moving? Oh, there we go. So developing cultural competence skills. So just looking at how we can improve ourselves and our actions to so that we can show up better for others. So, and there's it's not limited to this list. These are just kind of the ones I wanted to highlight the most. But communication, first and foremost, it's really important that we're able to be active listeners and making sure that we're not like listening to someone just to respond to them or that it's going in one ear out the other. We want to make sure that we're listening so that we can gain an understanding and understand their perspective, understand what they're saying, what they're going through, so that we can take better actions to respond to them and anything further if necessary. And just knowing and using inclusive and appropriate language so that we can be more effective in helping. And then just understanding how to handle difficult conversations with grace. And then next, I wanted to highlight relationship building, and just, finding common ground while acknowledging and honoring our differences, and just making sure that we're always engaging in cross-cultural conversations and activities because there's, at the end of the day, there's always something new to learn. And that helps us to maintain the friendships that we make and just build upon them all the time. And then the most important, I think, would just be accountable. There's nothing wrong with not knowing something, and it takes great character to be able to admit that you don't know something, but what matters is, correcting our actions when needed or making sure we learn how to do something, how to respond to something so that we can remain respectful and remain appropriate to people that we're interacting with. But all of this just to say that this is how we can kind of be a better ally and be a better leader to our peers. And how this can reflect into your chapter, becoming culturally competent. But what can we do? So we can start with like recruitment practices. So be more intentional about your outreach so you can expand to more diverse communities. Like, and I put like an example here, like if you're only hanging up flyers in an engineering building, you're probably going to get a lot of engineering students. So just make sure we're being intentional about who we're reaching out to, like where we're going to reach out to people, just so we can make sure that we can expand our organization as much as we can and be as diverse as possible. And then creating that sense of belonging, and that can look like a lot of different ways, but just supporting members in hard times of cultural tension. Like I to be frank, the world sucks sometimes, and people may be affected by some things more than I might be affected, or more than you might be affected by that. So just kind of like letting people know you're there for them would really mean a lot. And celebrating cultural events or heritage months, that's a great way to make your members feel seen and heard and appreciated. And doing service organization or service projects with things like that can help you expand like who you're serving, who you're assisting, and just I guess brainstorming ideas for inclusive activities for and with your chapter, and that way you can like gain a sense of what needs more attention or what your members feel really passionate about, or things that might be affecting a group of your members that we can extend into community outreach, like things like that. And in a leadership sense, essentially just be the example. We want to make sure as leaders that we're modeling the inclusive behavior, because that does trickle down in our chapters and what the chapter culture would look like. We have to be the start, essentially. Always encourage open discussions, open, respectful discussions, so that we can continue to learn about each other and our differences. Always be supportive towards our members, and just addressing issues when they arise. Don't ever be dismissive to someone just because you don't understand something, or just like make sure we're listening to our members so we can better assist them. And knowing what resources are available through your school is really important, because there's things like DEI trainings or conflict resolution, like mental health and wellness resources. Those are things that are good to have at your disposal, in case you ever need to use them or utilize them. And then also with leadership and like diversity roles within your chapter. And I feel like most chapters do have that, but just kind of developing on that, and expanding that as much as we can, so we can increase diversity and increase like awareness. So the overall impact, just personal growth, growth as the chapter as a whole, building a great reputation for the chapter, and also just developing leadership skills that will translate into your academic, your professional lives, your personal lives. You can create a stronger sisterhood, siblinghood, and just attracting more diverse audiences or potential members, and also expanding service opportunities. So I just want to take a minute just to real quick to just share, but anybody can come off of mute. But just what are some things that your chapter does that helps with some of the things that we talked about? Or maybe like what are some things that you would like to see your chapter implement? Anybody can share.
Hi. So my chapter, we like to do a lot of events surrounding cultural holidays or months, stuff like that. So we volunteer at like the Lunar New Year celebration that they do and that kind of thing. Or we volunteered at a tamale festival, and I think that's a really fun way for people to get involved in it and actually really serve the community that we talk about all the time from the position of a diversity chair, and to actually really be involved in it and to support. So, yeah.
Totally, that's great. I love that you guys do that. Anyone else? Oh, that's not problem. Oops. That's okay. I was the end of it anyways. Any takers? Let's see. Working and collaborating with other on-set members of Carlo. That's cool. Can we get one more? All right, no takers. That's okay. Well, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Does anyone have any questions?
I actually do have a question.
Sure.
What would you what would you recommend when it comes to, I know that the school that I go to, because of all of the executive orders in place, our DEI office has lost funding and stuff like that. And so a lot of the resources that we usually use and the organizations that we work with are in a really kind of uncertain place right now. So how would you recommend we go about navigating that?
I would say for now, I mean, especially with the uncertainty of everything, just of course having a discussion with the chapter as a whole. I feel like that's an important discussion to have just on a general level. But in terms of the resource, like we could start looking at anything like external resources that we might be able to utilize, or if there's anything like online courses or things that you could do as a chapter or have your chapter members do, that would be a good start, kind of like while we're in this like limbo situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Well, I think we're all set, but thanks for joining me, guys. I appreciate your time. I just sent in the chat the link for the survey if you have a couple minutes to fill that out. And then I'll also just, if anyone has any like other questions or anything, I will throw my email in here too. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Let me put that on there. But that's me. Um, but if there's not any questions or anything, feel free to jump off. Let me make sure I got everybody for the attendance so you can get credit for being here. I think I got everybody though. Let me double check 1 second. And then I'll stop my share so I can see it all at once. Okay. I think I was. I'm just gonna screenshot it so I don't like hold y'all here hostage. That would be weird. This is not working. Okay, whatever. I'll fix it later. But we're all wrapped up. I'll hang back for a second. If anyone has any like one-on-one questions they want to ask me or anything. But thanks for joining me. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Hi, I just wanted to apologize for my lateness. I'm in an area that's really heavily impacted by flooding right now, and I was on my way home from church and hit floodwater and had to figure out a way to get home. So I did just want to apologize for my lateness and sorry if I interrupted.
Oh no, you're totally fine. Are you okay? Are you
I'm good.
doing
We're safe. We have
okay?
power. Our internet's a little glitchy, but we're safe and we have power. I had to, they say a 3 point turn. It turned into like a
Yeah.
20 point turn. Trying
Oh
to get
God.
out
Okay.
there. trying to get my butt out of there and find the route that was safe home. But we
Well,
are.
I am
My
glad
whole
you're doing
family is
good.
safe. We're good.
Perfect.
I did
That is
just
what I
want to
care about.
apologize.
That's all right. And have a good rest of your day.
You
Okay.
too.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.